Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think we have to give credit to the Chancellor for a budget that, in terms of political presentation, was very, very clever. I think the SNP have had an absolutely rotten day. I think the decision to put money into potholes was clever. The fuel duty-frees, very, very welcome, especially for those living in rural parts of our country. But for me, the big one, of course, is the 1p a pint off draft beer, which I've worked out will save me over £1 a week, so I'm particularly thrilled with that. But economically, I sat listening to the numbers thinking this budget is illiterate. I don't know who's doing the sums, whether perhaps it's the Right Honourable Member for Hackney North, but the sums do not work. And the markets...
Before we dive into the footage, can I ask you for a quick favour? If you're enjoying this content, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Believe it or not, over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's completely free for you, but it means the world to us and helps the channel grow. So, did you click it? Awesome, thank you. Now let's get into the video.
Right, picture this. Britain wakes up to another foggy morning, kettles boiling, the dog already chewing the post, and somewhere in Westminster the Chancellor is standing proudly like a man who's just fixed a leaky roof with chewing gum and hope. And as the Commons begins buzzing like a hive of mildly irritated bees, in strolls someone ready to comment on the great budget reveal. And suddenly the entire chamber turns into something between a school assembly and a pantomime. And honestly, there's nothing more British than watching MPs pretend everything is fine, while the national economy is doing the financial equivalent of tripping on a doorstep. Now, as the speech opens, the whole room seems to tilt forward, waiting for some grand revelation about growth, stability, maybe even a surprise gift like free umbrellas for the entire country. Instead, what we get is this brilliantly theatrical, borderline Shakespearean moment where even the praise feels like a backhanded compliment served with a cup of cold tea. The Chancellor, we're told, has delivered a very clever budget, which is British for, we're not sure what just happened, but it certainly was something. And honestly, you can almost hear the collective gasp when someone points out the most important part, a full penny off draft beer. A bold and visionary economic move, sure to ignite the engines of prosperity, 1 pint at a time. Somewhere, an accountant is crying into a calculator. And if that wasn't enough to make the nation's pubgoers break into a polite applause, we're also told this could save, what, a whole £1 a week? £1! The kind of money that changes lives, or at least buys half a sandwich if you're lucky and the cafe is feeling generous. And while that's happening, the markets, those mysterious creatures that react to everything from policy announcements to the Chancellor sneezing in the wrong tone, are already panicking. Apparently, just hours after the budget, something called gilt yields decide to leap dramatically, like they've just heard a ghost story. No one's panicking yet, we're assured, not quite back to the mini-budget of chaos era, but definitely within shouting distance. It's the financial equivalent of saying the house isn't on fire, but it looks a bit smoky in the kitchen. And then we get this glorious, almost sitcom-level revelation that the person in charge of ensuring the nation gets value for money, something we all care about, especially when we see the price of cheese these days, has spent years sitting on the board of a famously expensive rail project. It's like appointing someone who oversaw the Titanic to run a ferry service, perfectly British in its logic. Then, just as the chamber settles into its usual rhythm of muttering, someone raises a point of order, that timeless parliamentary tradition where an MP tries to steer the conversation back on track or at least wobble it in a different direction. Except this time it's not even a real point, just a question about whether someone warned someone else about mentioning her in the chamber. The Deputy Speaker responds with the patience of a teacher who's been asked for the 8th time whether homework is mandatory. She says, "Nice try," and somewhere you can hear the quiet, dignified clunk of parliamentary sass. Once the room stops chuckling, we get to the big mantra of the day, invest, invest, invest. And for a moment, it sounds like the government is about to encourage a nationwide entrepreneurial renaissance, Dragon's Den for the masses. You can almost imagine everyone in the country lining up to pitch their ideas. Garden gnome rentals, tea-scented candles, or a revolutionary new method of complaining about the weather. But no, this investment isn't coming from individuals or business leaders or anyone with actual money to risk. No, the Chancellor herself will be managing these investments on the nation's behalf, which is bold, ambitious and faintly terrifying in the same way letting your mate Dave reinvest your life savings in vintage car parts would be. And then, because there's always one, an MP pops up and delivers the most wonderfully snarky line of the day, asking whether this investment would be better coming from the British government or, the Russian one. The entire room freezes like someone's just suggested nicking sweaters out of spaghetti. Half the chamber groans, the other half looks around hoping someone else will respond first, and the reply is essentially, grow up. Iconic, pure Westminster theatre. Now, the next bit hits like a reality check wrapped in sarcasm. We're reminded that many of the people leading the charge on business policy have never actually worked in, well, business. In fact, some apparently have barely worked in anything outside of politics, which is again deeply British, because nothing screams expertise like becoming responsible for an industry you've only read about on a laminated briefing note. And then comes the part that feels like an economics lecture delivered with the energy of someone who's just discovered their favourite shop has closed. Growth forecasts are tiny, minuscule, positively microscopic. They make the country's ambitions look like a deflated balloon tied to a park bench. The government says that in 4 years' time, growth could hit a whopping 1.5%. Stunning. Dazzling. A number so imaginably tiny it may require binoculars to see. And once you account for population changes, well, the picture